as you're probably well aware, on the 19th of December 2023, an anonymous letter was published on an open letter forum calling for archaeologists to unite and reframe the so-called Stonehenge debate. This is a discussion about the nature of the archaeological mitigation ahead of and during an operation to reroute the A303, a road that runs past Stonehenge, through a tunnel that goes underneath the World Heritage status landscape. As it stands, this letter is signed by 1,145 signatories, just over 1,000 verified, and it was very quickly picked up on by the BBC. Only 2 days later, on the 21st of December, at that point 733 archaeologists had signed the letter, which called, as they reported, for archaeologists to take their rightful lead in the Stonehenge tunnel debate, and also as well supposedly was asking for nothing more than a powerful, evidence-based voice reframing the Stonehenge debate. Now, this is interesting, as if we go back to the letter, the "We agree upon the following" is quite a brief paragraph. With the 80th anniversary of the Council for British Archaeology coming in 2024, this is the perfect time for the heritage sector to unite in working towards a future where archaeology is valued and well resourced, etc., etc. Except that was not what those 733 people had signed. In fact, if we go back to the Wayback Machine on the 21st of December, when that article was written, we actually had a much longer "We agree upon the following." The monument at Stonehenge is not under threat. There was reference to a high standard of archaeology under our obligations to UNESCO, which is quite ironic, given that UNESCO have been saying that this mitigation work and this road work in particular is not sufficient to preserve the UNESCO World Heritage status of Stonehenge. The reference to Sir Barry Cunliffe as a key figure in this mitigation and this process, and also as well pushing quite hard on the relevance of the National Planning Policy Framework, which is fair enough, was also one of the things that people agreed to before that final paragraph, which does remain on the letter. At that point, there were 638 signatures, 570 of which were verified. The question is, why the change? I don't know for certain. It may represent a growing awareness that, for example, the UNESCO mention in particular is somewhat ironic. It may represent a conversation that's occurring within this campaign to reframe the debate. But nonetheless, a change has occurred, and what people have signed up for has therefore altered, or so it seems. Now, this is intriguing to me because actually many of the people who actually signed up to this letter in the early days, people, for example, like Matt Pope, Tess Mackling, Chloe Duckworth, and others, were actually involved a couple of years ago in a key campaign that could have avoided all of this and achieved some of the self-same goals that they claim they want to achieve. I'm talking, of course, about the Dig for Archaeology campaign, set up in May 2021 to stand against all threats to archaeology, working alongside a wide range of individuals, politicians, archaeological orgs, and prominent advocates to get the message across that archaeology is important. Very admirable. Except they didn't quite have the stamina to keep it going. If we actually go to their Twitter account and then click on digforarch.co.uk, unfortunately the website can't be reached. This campaign is effectively dead. They haven't tweeted since October, and the account had primarily become a retweet account, really, for other people within the archaeological world. It should be noted that since publishing the original of this video, both on YouTube and TikTok, the Dig for Archaeology Twitter account have in fact retweeted again for the first time in months, retweeting the CBA's tweet from December the 29th. So glad to be of service, I suppose, reminding you that, Twitter exists, or maybe this is not so much a dead campaign as a intermittent zombie. Regardless, this does beg the question that I'm about to ask about reactionary behavior as opposed to proactive behavior. But it doesn't fill me with much confidence as to exactly how far this Stonehenge conversation will and can go. Now, if we actually look at the manifesto that was published by Dig for Archaeology, many of the same points were referenced. For example, all this is currently at risk thanks to a perfect storm of threats to both the university and commercial archaeology sectors. In the open letter, we actually have reference to not so much a perfect storm, but rather the notion that after years of cuts to the sector, coupled with the politically convenient presentation of archaeology as a barrier to development, hashtag dig for archaeology, hashtag we are not red tape, in planning reform discussions, we simply cannot afford to take another blow. Now, I'm not questioning the motives or the goodwill of the people who want to support these campaigns and to put them forward. What I am wondering, though, is why is archaeology so reactive, as opposed to proactive? Had the Dig for Archaeology campaign gone ahead as it might have done, for example, I do know that Tess was running the Twitter account after a little while, and Matt Pope did sign up to support it, then perhaps this letter might not have been necessary, with figures such as, for example, Matt Pope as the first signatory. It's the same people with the same good intentions, and yet again, though, a reaction to a perceived crisis, as opposed to a sustained campaign with a variety of voices pushing for archaeology to be valued as much as we all value it. It's an intriguing prospect and problem, and I can only hope that archaeologists get better at talking to each other and talking to the public. And then hopefully this sort of big gesture might become a little less necessary. Anyway, something to think about. I can't make it make sense, unfortunately. It really does seem that suggesting an alternative to the Stonehenge plan at this stage and the archaeological mitigation of loss through preservation by record is construed as not supporting archaeology, archaeologists, and presumably their professionalism as well, our profession's ability to do that work well. It seems to have really kicked off based on two moments of criticism. The first one is Mike Parker Pearson asking questions about sampling strategy and suggesting that in such a sensitive landscape, standard practice would not be enough. Now, that conversation developed, and presumably practices would be modified on site to do the job well and well enough. The other was a tweet from Tom Holland, who suggested that archaeologists were like ravens following Viking warbands through the landscape, i.e. being slightly vulture-y and just following where the money might be. That tweet was criticised and also was retracted. And that's it. That's the only thing that I've seen any evidence for. Generalised attacks on archaeologists don't appear to be happening. But the accusation that that not signing a letter like this or criticising this letter effectively is not supporting archaeology and archaeologists is everywhere. And I've been accused of that several times in the past few days. It's been an interesting Christmas, New Year period. And that's about it, really. The editing of the open letter today, and then re-editing it to include essentially a conclusion very similar to the original conclusion, with some changes to specifics of bullet points, is intriguing. I'm not sure of the ethics of changing words that more than 1,000 people have signed and expressed support for, or sorry, I suppose more to the point of the protocol. Is that normal? If you put an open letter out in a newspaper, you stand by those words, and presumably you've spent a lot of time constructing those words. But in this instance, because it's online, presumably editing was deemed necessary through various conversations, I can only presume, and so it happened. So I'm not really sure about that. But yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? And I guess we'll see what happens next to the open letter and also as well in terms of Stonehenge and the reputation of archaeologists and our ability to have civilized conversation, and also actually to have a sustained effort towards a goal. Because as I identified in my previous video, we're not great at either. It'd be good to see some change.